Hi, Scott Whitley here, and welcome to this first in a new series of bass lessons on bass maintenance. Now this one's a special request, or originally it was, for Tom Jen, so thank you very much for that. He requested a lesson on the subject of bass maintenance, but when I looked at it, I figured the subject is so broad, when you get into the ins and outs of setting the action and adjusting the truss rod and all that kind of stuff, I figured it's just too much for one lesson. So what I'm going to do is break it down into a series of 4 or 5 or so lessons, depending on how many lessons it takes to cover the entire subject. So in this first lesson, we're just going to look at some really basic stuff. We're going to look at how to clean the bass, keep it really nice and clean, and how to, if there are any parts on the bass that need lubricating, that kind of thing. We're going to look at that, and how to protect your bass, how to keep it safe, okay? So as a general rule, you don't want to use any harsh chemicals, obviously I would say, on the bass to clean it, and you don't want to use anything that's abrasive, so you want to stick to using cloths that are lint-free, soft cotton cloths, or microfiber cloths. They work very well as well, the polishing type. Just before I move on, I'm going to be talking about how to clean a high gloss finish bass, or a painted finish bass. If you've got something like a Warwick where it's got, like the natural wood and it's just oiled and then waxed, the process is a little different. So maybe I can cover that in another lesson. The only problem being I don't have a bass like that. But it's pretty obvious with those instruments. It's just a case of applying wax, leaving it to soak in a little, and then buffing it off. Okay. So let's look at what to use on a bass like this. Okay, the stuff I use, and I've been using this a long time, this kind of stuff, is just kind of household furniture polish. This is one called Mr. Sheen. It's what we've got over in the UK. So depending on what part of the world you're in, obviously it's going to be a different brand, I guess. But it's just a multi-surface polish, and it's the kind of stuff you can use it on wood, glass, plastic, metal, that kind of thing. I'm not guaranteeing this is going to work for you, obviously, I can't do that, but this is the sort of furniture polish I've been using for, like I say, 20 odd years, and no adverse effects whatsoever. I mean, you can use on the body things like car polish, but I don't really recommend that. I've done it myself and it does a great job. But after a while, when you're sweating on a gig and that, it kind of gets a bit tacky, but this stuff doesn't tend to, okay? So let's look at how to clean the bass. We're going to start with the body itself, okay? So I'll just demo how to use this stuff. It's really obvious, but in case you've never done it, let's give it a go. So I'm going to, I'll do the back of the bass. It's pretty shiny already, so I think I did it this morning, but there you go. Here we go. So I just get this furniture polish and just a light mist over it, okay? And then I get my soft cloth. This one is a microfiber cloth. Okay, and I just kind of work it in. I'm going around all the kind of areas where dirt might collect. Okay, and then when most of it's kind of buffed or mopped up, you turn the cloth over to a dry side and then just buff it to a high gloss shine. Okay, and there you go. Let's have a look at that. There you go, nice and shiny, very good. And that's great. And then, I mean, you might need to just do that maybe once every few months, just to because it does clean it as well. It doesn't just polish it, it does take off some of the dirt that might have accumulated on there. And then in between polishing with that stuff, if you just get a new microfiber cloth or one that you've washed in the washing machine and keep that in your guitar case, you can just kind of give it a buff over and it pretty much comes up like new again, you know, in between those polishes. On the front of the bass, you've got to be a little bit more careful because you don't really want to get any of that polish on the strings. And the reason is that when you get kind of grease and polish and wax and things like that on round wound strings, that's what kind of starts to kill them off, make them sort of go a bit dead, you know. So what I do is I'll spray down the wings, I guess, of the bass down there just lightly and there, avoiding the strings. And then what I do, I get the cloth and I just kind of push the polish in from the part where you've applied it here into the middle like that, and I do that there and all those, can't get in there, all those little gaps, and then I'll do it from the other side. So there I might have to use maybe my little finger just to push it right up like that, okay? And then once I've done that, I find a dry bit of the cloth and do the same process till it's buffed to a high gloss shine, and then just buff the rest of it. And then you've got to work round the switches and the knobs. And what you've done there is pretty much avoided getting it on the strings, which is good. The other thing that's an odd thing to clean is the bridge. It's probably about the most awkward thing to clean when the strings are on your bass. So what I do is I'll spray a bit of polish around it, and more often than not a little bit of mist from the aerosol will get on the bridge. And then all you can do is really get the cloth and just kind of make it into a little point and just kind of get in between the strings as best you can. That's all you can do. If you really want to give it a good clean, a good time is when you change your strings and there's no strings on the bass. Okay? So moving on, I think that about covers the body. The next thing we'll look at is the headstock. Okay? Now with the headstock you can go ahead and use the same polish. You don't have to worry about getting it on the strings here because this part of the strings isn't affecting the sound, so you can just spray the front and the back of the headstock. And it doesn't matter about getting it on the tuners either, because again, you can just clean them all off with your soft microfiber cloth and just keep working around and working in between the strings until all the polish is kind of mopped up and it's buffed to a high gloss again. Okay. So that's it, that's the headstock and the body. Right, so moving on to the neck, the back of the neck that is, not the fingerboard. My recommendations for that, whether it's a finished neck or an unfinished neck, you know, it's kind of like natural wood, is simply to use no products at all, no chemicals whatsoever. And just get a very clean cotton cloth or microfiber cloth, excuse me, just give it a good polish on the back. Now the reason I recommend not to use any chemicals whatsoever is certainly no wax, definitely not. Is although it will polish up to an absolute glass finish and look amazing if it's a gloss finish neck, what you'll find is when you're on a gig and it's hot and the lights are on and you're sweating, all this wax will become really sticky and it's not nice to play, you know. So the only thing I might recommend you use is I sometimes use just a bit of light oil, you know, like machine oil, or I even use some stuff called fast fret. I'll talk about that in a minute. And I might just put a bit on the back of the neck and then just lightly clean that off with a soft cloth. And that, because it's an oil, that actually helps you be able to glide up and down the neck rather than it go all sticky and all the rest of it. Okay, moving on. The fingerboard. Now, the fingerboard, like the bridge, is obviously very hard to clean properly when you've already got strings on. Okay, so it's going to be a tricky job. Excuse me, let me just take a drink. So what I'm going to show you is a product I use, which works really well. Some people don't like it, so it's a kind of, you've got to try it for yourself. But it's something called fast fret. Okay. Been using this, I don't know, gosh, like 30 years nearly, and what you get in the tin is you get a little cloth like this, and it's a special cloth. I'll tell you about that in a minute. Okay, and you get this thing. It's like a little stick. Just put the other parts down. Drop everything on the floor. It's a little stick with this kind of wadding stuff on it. Okay, and what you do with this is, and you can do this before you play, and then you can do it after as well, and it does two jobs at once. What you do is you just rub it on the strings, okay, like this. And what I do, if you notice, I turn the angle so I can get right down the side of the strings as well, and you push it onto the fingerboard, so you don't worry about it going on there, okay, and you do each of the strings like that, okay. Put as much on as you like. Alright, and I'll do the G string. Now don't worry about any of these little bits of this wadding kind of coming off. They'll just kind of blow off the bass if they get on there. And then what you do is you get the special cloth that comes with it. And the thing that's special about this cloth is that I've tried using other cloths, and when threads start to come off the cloth, they get stuck on the strings, and then they become really hard work to get off. But for some reason with this cloth, and what you do, I just kind of bunch the cloth up, wrap it around the string, pinch it like that between my first finger and thumb, excuse me, and then just do this kind of business. And what's going on, you get all this kind of blackness appearing on the cloth. That's the muck coming off the strings. So I'll just do that on the next string. Always choose a clean part of the cloth for the next string. I'm going to do this quickly. Okay, turn it over. There we go. Popped out the nut there, fantastic. There we go. And let's just find another bit. Okay, to the G string. There we go. And then I'll get the cloth and just kind of wipe the fingerboard in between the strings. Okay. Now the cool thing with this is it's doing two jobs in one, like I say. It's cleaning all that kind of grease and stuff we were talking about that can get in the strings, you know, from dead skin and sweat and all that kind of stuff. And at the same time, it's leaving behind its own residue, which is this really nice kind of, like a really fine oil. I don't know what it is exactly, but it does a couple of things. It makes the fingerboard look nice and dark, you know, it kind of helps with the grain and cleans it to a degree. But it also makes playing really comfortable. So if you kind of, you know, if you ever get, again, sweaty when you're on stage and your fingers are sticking, this stuff helps you kind of glide up and down the fingerboard. It's really good stuff. And it protects your strings. So if you clean your bass strings after a gig, before you put it in the case, it protects them, you know, it keeps them clean for the next time. So that's Fast Fret. There are other products out there that work, you know, equally as well, but that's the one that I choose to use. So that pretty much covers keeping the bass clean. That's about everything I do, okay? Now I'm just going to talk quickly about something that isn't necessarily cleaning in that sense of the word, but it is cleaning. And that is that sometimes you can get, that dirt can get in the jack socket, okay? So what happens there is, I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but you plug the jack socket into the jack plug into your bass, and you get a kind of crackling thing if you wobble the jack plug around. And a lot of the time, that's a bit of kind of corrosion that's built up inside the jack plug, oxidization, that kind of thing. And the part that makes the connection with your jack plug, the area that actually touches is so small that it only takes, you know, a tiny bit of dirt to give you problems. So there's a couple of products that I use that I'll just show you that work really, really well. This is like 3-in-1 oil, and you can get it in a little squeezy can. Okay, it's just kind of regular, you know, stuff you'd use to put on door hinges and things like that. Now what I do is I just get a little bit of that on a cotton bud, the thing you use for cleaning your ears and stuff. Just put a few drops on a cotton bud, and then all you do is you just basically, obviously without the jack plug in, you put it into the jack socket and just kind of clean in the jack socket. It'll go all black actually. So then turn the cotton bud round, put a few more drops of oil on that side, and do it. Excuse me, do it again, and keep going until no more of this kind of black stuff is coming off, and you'll probably find that your jack socket will work just perfectly after that. Okay, so that just about covers how to keep your bass clean. So what we're going to have a look at now is how to protect your bass, how to keep it safe. And a lot of people don't realise that extreme changes in temperature and humidity can have a disastrous effect really on your instrument. So the first thing you want to avoid is keeping your bass anywhere that's say extremely cold. So don't leave it in the car overnight. You know, particularly in winter. You know, that's what I'm talking about when it's freezing. Don't leave it in a garage with no heating. Ideally, it wants to be in a house or in a building that's always kept pretty much at room temperature. And the same for heat as well. You know, don't, obviously in the middle of summer, don't leave it in its case in a car. You know, and again, don't leave it in a particularly hot room if it can be avoided. And obviously this extends to not leaving the instrument near or leaning on a radiator, or near a window where the sun's coming in, anything like that. You just want to keep the bass at all times as near as you can to kind of room temperature, kind of 21 degrees C, that sort of thing. A couple of reasons for that, but the main reason is with a wood instrument, wood expands and contracts a lot. Most most materials do, but wood certainly does it quite a lot. And if it's subjected all the time to extreme cold and then heat, it can do things like, and I've had this happen, I did accidentally leave a bass in winter one night in the back of the van, forgot to bring it in the house. The next morning had a great big crack down the paint on the back, so it really does happen. And humidity. Now humidity can be a little bit more difficult to avoid, because sometimes you have great swings in humidity just in the climate where you live, But obvious things are, don't put it in anywhere where you might be cooking, if it's near the kitchen where there's a lot of steam, or near a bathroom, avoid those kind of things. And of course, avoid putting it, if you've got like a portable air conditioner or any kind of air conditioning, don't put it near the air conditioning vent, because that's going to dry it out all the time as well. So that's some stuff that might not be that obvious, but it's really worth considering and taking note of. So that about covers the kind of heat, humidity subject. A little note on something that you might not think about too much, but again, it's a really important thing in terms of looking after your bass and security, is to make sure that the strap buttons are securely screwed in. And they do have a nasty habit of kind of making their way loose, and sometimes they come a bit loose and then they pull out, or they come loose and you go to tighten them up and the screw kind of just turns round and round. There is a little quick fix for that. If you get that situation where you screw it back in and it's not tightening up, it's just kind of turning round and round. If you unscrew it, take it out, get a wooden matchstick, and ideally, if you've got some wood glue around, just dip it in a bit of wood glue, although it will work if you haven't, okay, and stuff that in the hole and snap it off so that the end of so where you've snapped it off is flush with the hole, and then go ahead and screw the screw back in. It should tighten up fine. If it doesn't, unscrew it, get another match and do it again, and keep doing that until it tightens up, and it will work and it'll stay secure then. Okay, so a final note, I guess, on protecting the bass will be what you're keeping in when you're transporting it. Okay, it's really tempting to buy the best instrument you can, particularly when you're starting out, and then kind of just carry it around with you and hope that it's okay when you put it on the back seat of the car or whatever. But it really doesn't take much for it to all end in disaster. If, like I say, if you put it on the back seat of the car, then someone runs out in front of the car and you have to anchor on, it hits the deck, and So at least get a padded gig bag if you can for your bass. I say at least. I carry my basses a lot of the time in padded gig bags, but I try to get good ones where the foam's kind of 25mm thick plus, with, you know, big chunky zip fasteners and all the rest of it. And they're great if you're in charge of your bass. In other words, if you're looking after it, if you're personally carrying it around, if it's just going in a car, not a van, they're the ideal solution really, because you can put them on your shoulder. They're not too heavy to carry if you're going on buses and things like that. And as long as you're in charge of it, and you're not leaving it in the hands of somebody else, you know, the chances of anything untoward happening to it in a good gig bag are pretty slim. The next kind of level of protection would be obviously a hard case, and there are various kind of, you know, different types of hard case. You can get ones that are made of wood, ABS plastic ones, all that kind of thing. You know, as a general rule, just try and get the best you can afford really. The ABS kind of plastic ones are very affordable, and you know, they offer a lot of protection. And obviously make sure that your bass isn't kind of rattling around inside there. If you can't get one that fits exactly, then get one slightly bigger, and then get foam and cut it out to kind of, you know, make the bass so it sits nice and still in the case. And really, a case is the only, a flight case like that is the only obvious solution if you're travelling by air, or if you're travelling with a band and your bass has to go in the back with all the amps and stuff. You've really got to have it in a hard case, I would say. Okay. And I guess one last note that something that you know, a lot of musicians, and I've been guilty of this, have avoided, and it's something I've actually just renewed yesterday, is instrument insurance. It's not that dear, particularly if you haven't got a lot of stuff. If you've just got one or two instruments, you know, go online and do, you know, search for instrument insurance, and it's just that peace of mind that if anything does happen to it, that you're not going to get stuck, you know. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that. In lesson 2, I'm going to look at how to adjust the action on the bass, and that's also going to involve how to adjust the truss rod as well. So stay tuned for that. In the meantime, if you've got any questions, please email me on scott@scott-whitley.com. Hop over to the website at www.scott-whitley.com, and I'll see you in the next lesson. Cheers. Thank you.